Meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. First, we must establish a quorum. And do you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Adams? Here. Commissioner Atkinson?
Here.
Commissioner McGuire-Negus? Here. Commissioner Coe?
Here.
All commissioners present.
We have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
So the first matter is public comments on items not on the agenda. And we've agreed to move the History Museum comments till later.
To the commissioner reports and comments.
So do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda?
Are there any comments from items on the agenda? Okay, great. No, we do not.
Okay. So items for consideration and action, we'll begin the consent calendar. So the first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of November 19th. Does staff have any input on that?
No, we do not. We have no presentation for this.
Does the commission have any comments on that?
Yes. There would need to be a motion by a commissioner and then a second.
I so moved that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I second. The motion is moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Commissioner Negus is aye. Yes. The motion passes 4-0.
Next on the agenda is a public hearing. And the first one is H24-009, City of Los Altos. Request for a historic alteration permit to remove and replace 22 apricot trees on a historic landmark property. This property is categorically exempt from the environmental review under section 15331, Historical Resource Restoration and Rehabilitation of the California Environmental Quality Act, aka CEQA. And does the chair have a staff report that they would like to present?
Yes, staff does. Let me get that.
Sorry.
Okay. The best is working right now. Good evening, Commissioner Coe and Commissioners. My name is Sean Gagg, Senior Planner with the Planning Division. The project before you tonight is a request for Historical Commission to approve a historic alteration permit, HG 24-0009, to remove and replace 22 trees in the Civic Center Apricot Orchard at 1 North San Antonio Road. The project site is located on the Civic Center complex, which is located on a block bounded by Angela Drive to the north, Cielito Drive and Eleanor Avenue to the east, Hillview Avenue to the south, and San Antonio Road to the west. On September 18th, 1991, Council passed Resolution 91-31 to clarify the Civic Center Orchard Historic Landmark boundaries, which surround City Hall in two areas. One to the east of San Antonio Road and west of City Hall, and two east of City Hall and west of the Lacey Building, south of the parking lot and north of the library. This is in your agenda report. Since '91, the orchard boundaries have remained unchanged, but many trees have been replaced due to disease or death. The original and modified designation did not set a fixed number of trees or planting sites, and the orchard is now organized into regular rectangular sections with rows of trees. The slide shows the area where the 22 trees are proposed for removal within the historic orchard, which is bounded by, again, by City Hall, Lacey, and the library. The Arborist report also conveys a drawing that shows the actual locations of each of the trees, and I'll show that to you in a future slide. This provides a photograph of the site, the trees of the apricot orchard on the left and on the right side of the slide. The slide before you is the Arborist report's map that shows the locations of each of the trees that are proposed for removal, the 22 trees. That is also attached to your staff report. So the trees proposed for removal are being removed for health-related concerns. The Arborist report by Backyard Orchards and Orchardscapes found that the trees succumbed to a pre-existing fungal infection combined with stress from insufficient irrigation during the 2023 growing season, and then also due to a lethal winter pathogen. Due to the severity of the disease, removal of the affected trees is the only viable solution. The commission tonight would need to make particular findings to approve the project. Staff does believe that the project complies with the three findings. We've provided within the staff report compliance that the project does confirm with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the tree and of the historic places, with standards compliance with standards 1 through 10 of the requirements, as stated in the agenda report, and as further stated in the findings within the report. Staff's recommendation is for the Historical Commission to approve the historic alteration permit for the removal of the replacement of 22 trees in the apricot orchard in the Civic Center orchard, per the recommended findings and conditions of approval, and find the project is categorically exempt as stated in the staff report. This concludes staff's presentation, unless there are any questions.
At what point was it noted that the trees were in distress?
1 second. Well, per the Arborist report, the report was prepared November 15th, 2024. That's the date of the analysis. I don't have a specific date when it was determined prior to that. What I can only provide to you is the information provided in the Arborist report. November 15th, 2024 is the date that they made these determinations regarding the health of the trees.
It says on the page with the photos, each of them is noted, did not revive with drip irrigation during 2024. So I guess that would assume then that the final determination was made sometime last year. And that they tried to revive them, but it didn't work.
The final determination was made based on the condition in November.
Nutrition rate. Not an arborist, but based on my observations, these were young trees. In fact, most of the trees in the orchard are a few years old at most. There's not that many trees that are older and would be dying of old age.
So as stated in the ARBS report, since the orchard is managed organically, they can't use chemicals to sterilize the soil of old apricot tree diseases. So they've listed a potential following measures, but that's been a constraint on the orchard due to the management of the site organically. So the conditions and diseases that we have isn't a new condition or issue for the orchard. And the goal is to remove these trees due to their conditions and then replace them with similar species of trees.
Does does the spot need to sit before you can safely put a new tree? Is that in the report somewhere?
No, it is not. I'm sorry to say. Let me double check for you. No, it does not specify a timeline in regards to how long it has to be followed.
In 2023, what happened? Why were they not watered? What was the irrigation problem in 2023 that seems to have influenced them? And has that been fixed? Maybe.
So it's my understanding in speaking with Orchard Commons was that there was reduction in overall water at the site to try to eliminate some of these pathogens and fungal issues that they were having with it. So then they had reduced overall water usage at the site to try to control that. But it didn't have the overall outcome that they had hoped in regards to trying to eliminate that. It's resulted in a loss of these trees.
And were other trees, I assume every tree was treated in that way. It just
Correct.
happens that these particular ones.
I mean, unless you visit the Civic Center often, it was not irrigated for the duration of 2023, which at the time prior to permanent irrigation, it was irrigated with metal pipes throughout the orchard. And that wasn't done until the primary drip irrigation was installed in the orchard.
Commissioners have questions?
Yeah, questions.
So is there an official applicant for this motion that would like to address, or we just are going with?
Well, yeah, the city of Los Altos is the applicant and I'm with the planning division. So in effect, I represent both sides of that.
So I would like to open this for public comment. And I have two cards. And Alice Mansell was first, I believe. And the speaking time limit this evening is 3 minutes.
Good evening. I last spoke with some of you last year. I submitted an oral comment, so this will be very brief. I'd like to restate from my oral comment, I am an attorney. I've worked over 30 years on historic land use laws. I also have done a lot of fingernails in the dirt with Jane Packard at the orchard, starting with the harvest season in July of 2023. So and I love the orchard. I'm out there a lot, particularly also because I'm at the library a lot. We are still waiting in the public for the first historic resource evaluation and the first environmental impact report for any alterations to the historic orchard since the summer of 2023, when the city signed a contract with the museum. Those are the kind of reports that will tell you what you've got, what the conditions are, what the context is relating the orchard to the Smith House, and the whole big picture. For example, to be able to answer the questions of what was the past irrigation like, and change the irrigation from pipes underground or sprinkling overhead to drip irrigation. Here's what the plan is, and all that. Going through a public process through your commission as the state law requires. Same thing is we're still waiting for the Los Altos History Museum annual report. It was due last August, and the maintenance rehabilitation plan due it was July 2024. Those I've been trying to get hold of him from either the museum or the city, public records, or just asking as a, sometimes volunteer with the museum, but nothing's available. I hear things and a lot of pointing fingers, but the bottom line is both reports are slow walked. And until you have those reports before you, so you can see them, a lot of the questions you just answered here would be answered in those reports, or the HRE, or the EIR. But because we don't have any of those four things, I urge you to reject this request. Or at least if you approve it, do it with a big asterisk that says, don't come before us with anything more than, say, swapping out a window in a historic building, like swapping out a tree in an orchard, until we see all these other reports. Because otherwise, it's really, well, now putting my legal hat, it's a dereliction of legal duty for safeguarding of historic resources. So thank you very much.
Quick note to myself here. Maria Bautista.
Good evening. So I'm Maria Bautista. I am a resident of Los Altos and also a representative of the Preservation Action League of Los Altos. So we're a community group that has been invested in the preservation of historic resources, but primarily of the orchard. And we have been actively seeking the documentation that Alice mentioned. And I would just put the thought before you, that I don't think that you've been provided the information that you need in order to really make this decision tonight with clear conscience. I think it's interesting that the background information that you were given ends in 1991. 1991 was 34 years ago. There's been a lot that's been said and documented about the orchard since 1991. I've lived here at least that long. So I actually do know for a fact there is, but indeed there are other documents, including a historic resource filed with the California Department of Parks and Rec. It's a form that has it's quite sort of rich in coloring what the orchard is, can be, should be, was. And so I think that would be certainly something, if you're not already familiar with it, it would behoove you to become familiar with it. And I'm happy to provide you any of that information. But I think in addition to that, there's maintenance agreements and information, the date to 2007. And then in 2019, there was another historical background summary that you should also have in hand. I'm going to go, there's a couple of things I'd like to address. It's only 3 minutes, so I might be a bit scattered, but just a couple technicalities is the CEQA exemption is something I'd also question tonight too, because from my understanding of CEQA, which is very complicated, I admit, I don't know if you also have familiarity with that, but I am just getting my feet wet with CEQA. And from what I understand is you cannot have a categorical CEQA exemption related to a historical aspect, those two things. And there's actually, I can provide city staff with this too, if you reference, I'll give you the number, the CEQA guideline number for that, from what I understand. So that already is the supposition that this decision is based on is already incorrect. The other thing too is we've been very excited that we seem to be getting good synergy in the city, like with the History Museum and their efforts now as being the sort of overseer maintenance entity for the orchard. And so myself and another representative from Paula met with a representative who is working on the orchard currently in early December, and we walked the orchard and we looked at these trees that are in question. And we had asked at that time not to pursue. Can I extend that in any way? Is there a way to?
No, 3 minutes per person.
Okay. So I hope that the bit of my point was relayed. So but just in summary, I would ask you to postpone this to a time when we have more time to be accurate with it.
John Bayer?
So I'm gonna stand, not sit. I've sat way too much today. My name is John Bear. I own the city landmark structure, which we have restored over several decades. And there are rules and regulations that we have to follow as a city landmark. And what I believe is the city needs to also follow whatever rules and regulations are in place. And the city at times doesn't seem to do that. Halsey House is a great example where if that was my home, I would be in significant trouble for not properly maintaining a historic landmark. And so my question for you, and I simply don't know the answer, is the city following the rules that they make me and other people as homeowners follow? It's not clear to me that they are. There shouldn't be two sets of rules. Now, if they are, that's fine. But frankly, as commissioners, I think that's an important question that you should have clarity on. Is the city following the same rules? What's before you is only 1 degree more than what I was required to do when I just wanted to repave my driveway and re-landscape property that had no historic trees on it. Locally staff determined that they could do it administratively. It didn't have to come to the historical commission. But as you know, for many other projects that require changes to historic properties, you folks require a historic resource evaluation. I don't know if it's warranted in this case, but if you would require it of a resident, you should require it of the city. I think there's an important need to be consistent to both residents as well as when it comes to city-owned property. Thank you.
Those are the only 3 cards that I have.
Yes.
Comment period, and we will begin deliberations. Can we ask a question to the staff that I didn't ask before after your presentation for clarification? With regard to the trees, is there a specific time of year? Is there a health of the tree issue with removing the old ones, but then replanting new ones, that it has to follow a timeline? Like, do the new ones need to get planted in the spring, or is there any?
Yeah, I don't have information on the specific planting timeline for the removal and replacement of the tree.
I'm trying to interject. I know I'm not allowed technically to speak, but I think it is
I'm
important.
sorry, I can't do that.
But it is important to recognize, I walked the orchard today and some of the trees that are tagged are actually about to bloom. So I think we, on things, we have no expert input tonight, and that's concerning.
Okay, I did note on the arborist report that there had been some growth. What did you call them? Shooters. Maybe misconstrued as growth of the tree, but that the actual primary tree had been lost. But that could be what you're seeing. Okay, shall we go through, and would you like to go?
It would have been nice to hear from the arborist in person to answer questions that weren't in the report.
Mhm.
I don't know how that can happen, but.
ask, is that possible? And we'd have to do it at another meeting, correct? If we wanted to get input from the arborists personally?
Were there particular questions that the commission had, or were there particular concerns regarding the arborist report that's presented with you today that's
One question
insufficient?
I already asked is how long do you need to leave the land before you can plant a new tree? That would be good to know. Like, is it gonna be years before they can go in, or months, or?
I mean, you could, as commission, place particular conditions on the timeline of plantings of the trees, and then you could direct staff to work with the arborist to plant them within a specific timeline if you believe that would be necessary. So you could put particular constraints to direct us so that it doesn't lay fallow for a certain period of time. If for some reason we can't meet those requirements, then we would have to return to the commission to revise the condition.
Right now.
No. No questions?
I was a bit curious, I believe, I'm sorry, because I did, is it Marie Batista? Yeah. I don't know if we're allowed to comment or ask questions of the, people who spoke from the public. And I know, Marie, that you were under time pressure and didn't have time to explain some of the things you were mentioning. But I was curious about, I think you said there was a report in 2019 that we as commissioners haven't seen yet, and I didn't get who wrote that report.
It was a summary that was done for the museum. It was a description of the orchard.
So it's done for the museum, but not by the museum, is that right?
You know, actually, to tell you the truth, I don't know. I don't know who had initiated it.
I see. I was trying to get at how useful it might be to us, in considering this further, or, whether we have enough information to not try to track that down or not.
So I mean, I would just offer that following on to what Alice has mentioned, there's additional data on the orchard that exists. And there's been requests by the community to have further data updated so that everyone in our community is on the same page about how we handle and preserve a historic landmark. Because right now, all of the data is very scattered, and there is the sense that it's being cherry picked for particular reasons, as opposed to everyone just buying into being on the same page, so that we can move forward sort of with confidence about how we're doing things in the orchard and in the civic center related to the orchard. And it's not, as Mr. Bear suggested, anybody who has an historic landmark in the city, they have a binder of information that they need to bring before the historical commission and expert testimony for any alteration they make, because we're a certified local government. Like the nature of the way our government sits in the state of California, we're required by law to meet these historic processes when we make these decisions, and including the city. And so we have these very high standards for individual property owners, and yet in the city, we can't seem to get our ducks in order, just so everyone's comfortable and can spend their Tuesday night watching basketball. You know what I mean? It's like we continue to have to ask the same questions, and we're just saying, let's step back for a minute, get our ducks in order, and then we can make these decisions with confidence moving forward. Small ask.
Thank you for that explanation.
Provide a response.
Yes, please.
So the intention tonight is to review the removal and replacement of trees. There was, I think in previous comments, there were comments in regards to the necessity for all these additional studies and update the DPR forms. The only time that that's necessary when there is an impact to integrity or significance of a site. It generally occurs when you're changing either the size of the orchard, you're reducing the number of trees, you're adding new trees greater than the orchard boundaries, you're changing the organization of the orchard. Right now it's orthogonal, it's rectangular in size. If you were to change that form, those are all things that are like historical elements and features of the building that define the orchard. We can go back to the 91 DPR form. The DPR form in 91 was approved by the city. That is the defining document for the city, and is the DPR forms 523A and B. They define what are the character defining features of the orchard. It may be an old document, but it is the most current approved document that applies to this orchard. No other documents apply to the orchard unless they've been reviewed and approved by the city. You're out of order, I'm sorry. To the chair. Can you? I'm trying to. So what we have for you today is, based on the findings specify that a project, project can adversely affect the physical integrity or significance. What we're asking for is the removal of diseased trees that are dead and replacement with existing trees of same type and species. It will not affect the overall integrity of significance. It will be replacing a similar tree with a new tree that's similar in species. Very much like structure where you remove a window. If it's deteriorated to a point where it can't be repaired and you replace it with a window of a similar type, it is a similar relationship. In addition, while the CEQA does specify that exemptions can be utilized, Section 15331 of the Public Resource Code specifies that if you can comply with the Secretary of Interior standards and you can meet these standards, it will not result in an impact to historic significance to the site. So while they're partially true because they're looking at certain sections but not other sections, because this project complies with the Secretary of the Interior standards from staff's perspective, then it does qualify under CEQA for exemption. And staff does believe this project does meet the standards for the finding.
What you're saying then, if I understand correctly, is that the 1991 report is still sort of the gold standard in this case, and
Correct, and in future projects where there may be an impact to significance from the city's perspective, where there's a change to the boundaries in some way, or an encroachment into the boundaries of the orchard, then that triggers the significance analysis. That then triggers an update to the DPR. A historic resource evaluation isn't necessary. It's a narrative form of a 523A and B. The DPR forms from the state will provide a full analysis of the significance and of how it qualifies per the city's regulations regarding a designation as a historic landmark. So they'll revisit it and see, does it still qualify with a modification? This particular project is not altering the boundaries. It's not encroaching. It's not removing trees and not replacing them. It's replacing them. It's not changing the form or the shape or the organization of the trees. Those are things that would trigger significance or integrity issues, and that's not happening in this case.
I see. So you don't see a need to follow up on that HRE?
Well, I think in a future project that does have that, then yes. Or if the city does an update to the historic resource inventory, which may be something in the future we'll be doing, then that may be an opportunity for updating those DPR forms at that time.
I see. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay, could I have an indication from each commissioner, what their feeling is about either approving this or disapproving it?
I feel that we should approve it, because I would worry about disease spreading if the trees are not removed.
Great.
And that
Sorry,
they will
did
also
you
be
say
removed.
we should not approve it? Was that what you said?
No, we should
We
approve
should
it,
approve it.
but they should be replaced.
My concern is the considerable die-off of newly planted trees, but something was not done or was done correctly. But that said, we're at the current status is that the replacements should take place. Even if there is some kind of neglect or mismanagement that is to the current situation.
I also tend to lean toward as outlined. It carried, although we weren't able to hear from people representing the History Museum, it carries weight to me that we have something in writing, that the executive director of the museum supports the staff report, which I assume is a recommendation made in concert with the person who's also here, who has worked extensively with the orchid, and I feel that their familiarity with it carries a lot of weight. I had initially wondered if there were missing reports since 1991 that should be taken into account due to the public opinions expressed, but your reassurance, Sean, that those are not germane in this situation because of what's being recommended also carries weight. So I tend to lean toward approving it again with, as other commissioners have said, continued checking and monitoring of how things are going forward.
And I guess I'll follow up with that. I hear what's being said, and I agree that, and I hope that at some point there will be an appropriate trigger point that causes us, compels us, I guess, to readdress the, what is it, the 523 and whatever else. And I hope at that time, we will take care to get our documentation in order. And so that the questions that you all have raised about what's currently missing in terms of what the public has, and will address the kinds of issues that Mr. Bear brings up of what's required for whom. But I do not think that this is the time to do it. I think clearly this does not trigger that discussion, and that for all the reasons stated here, I am concerned about the health of the trees and getting them replaced, and hopefully dealing with the pathogens that are currently in the soil there. I think that needs to happen as soon as possible. I worry that if we decided to go down a road of analysis of various documentation and creation of new documentation, we wouldn't replace those trees for a long time. And that to me seems not in the best interest of the thing that we love the most, which is the orchard. So I believe we should go ahead and replace. Can I have a motion, please, from one of the commissioners?
And staff would recommend, if you recommend approval, if they utilize the motion, that you move to approve the historic alteration commitment, which is listed in the recommendation on page 1, which is most accurate for you of your staff report.
Would they like to make a motion? So basically what you do. You would recommend. Okay.
Yeah. I
Make a motion.
make a motion to recommend that we approve a historic alteration permit H24-0009 for the removal and replacement of 22 apricot trees in the Civic Center orchard per recommended findings and conditions of approval. Find that the project is categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15331, historical resource restoration and rehabilitation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Shall we do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Adams? Commissioner Atkinson?
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire-Negus? Chair Coe? Motion passes 4-0.
So we move on This is a discussion of the City of Los Altos Certified Local Government CLG Annual Report. Request to review and approve the annual report to the State Office of Historic Preservation. Have input?
Staff doesn't have a formal presentation, but just to comment, this is a repeating, template form that's submitted to us by the state, that we ask for, that we ask for you to complete every year, and that we just require your input.
So should we go through it?
Yes, and this is for, I should clarify, this is for the October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. It's based on a pretty awkward time period, but it's a time period that the state provides for the city. The city itself is a certified local government organization. With that, there's a series of benefits. Some of it includes funding through grants that could provide limited funding for historic resource inventory update. Historical Commission's been very successful in receiving grant funding for historic grant for the Halsey House a number of years ago, and you guys were paramount in managing that. And so this allows us to continue to pursue those when we need them in the future. And so we request that you review this. One of the specific items was that I was not aware of this commission or the previous commission having attended training in the last year, so I did not specify training. But if there's any historic related training that you've done, please advise me, and then we can make sure to revise the document for you.
What is the timeline on this review? Is this something we're supposed to complete tonight? Or?
Yes, because we're supposed to submit it, but generally you submit it to the end of the month, but we don't receive this document until December from the state, so the timing's kind of off, but we need to submit this to them this month, beginning of next month.
Okay, now I've received 2 public speaker cards. Is this with regards to the CLG issue? Yes, okay. Given that that's the case, so then I should open for public comment, yes?
Yes.
You're not going to ask clarifying questions first?
No, I don't need
I
to.
don't know, that's normally the order. I'm speaking as a commissioner myself, so former chair of my commission, so.
Did you all have any clarifying
I mean, I don't want to cut in, but I'm happy to make my comments, but people have questions that normally would come first.
I guess the intention is, so as you're aware, when staff makes the presentation, there's an opportunity for the commission to ask me any questions. So then generally you would ask the commissioners, and if they didn't, then you move to public comment.
Sorry about that. I'm not used to the thing yet. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff on this issue?
No.
Right, I'll go. And commissioners help each other, so that's not was my comment. My name's Eric Steinley. I'm on the Planning Commission, former chair of the Planning Commission. And with respect to the report, I noticed a couple of things. One, as Sean pointed out, because it's a volunteer commission, it's historical, because I know Gina studies place names and that is a form of history, but everybody is a volunteer with different backgrounds. And this is an extraordinarily complex thing, as you just heard, all right? And as a planning commissioner, I deal with exactly the same issues. In fact, some of the things you do come to us subsequently. And one of the things that I think it would be helpful for staff to assist you with would be further training in some of the issues that you have to deal with. CEQA is the Bermuda Triangle of California law. Things fly in and they're never heard from again. It would be helpful probably for you to know a little bit something about CEQA and to have some training on that. There are also training issues about restoration and that sort of thing. And so one of the things I would like to encourage, there's money available planning commissioners get training and can get training and can go to things and get some of the expenses of that paid. I think it would be very helpful for this commission, which has similar issues and similar problems and similar complexities, to be able to get to do that too. So what I would like to do is encourage you to encourage him to get the council to provide some of this. Okay, the city to provide some support, because you're working blind, and I know exactly what that's like. I started out that way too. People come and say all kinds of things, and you have no idea exactly what's true and what isn't. So it'd be very helpful to have that. So that was the one part of the report that I thought bore some comment, sort of an insider baseball comment, and I would encourage everyone to do that. So, Nick.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Oh, and the answer to John Bayer's question is that the one entity in the world that does not have to follow Los Altos rules is Los Altos.
Could staff provide to us a list of potential trainings that maybe mirror what the planning, or is a subset of what the planning commission does, so that we could add that?
Yeah, I could resend out to the OHP website link for webinars. There's a webinar training program, which I believe I'd sent out previously. I don't believe any of the commissioners completed them. So I could send out, it's on the Secretary of Interior standards, I believe. And what's nice about it is it's broken up into like 4 or 5 kind of little mini, like 10, 15 segments. So it's like, you want it to sit there for an hour. So you could do little segments. I think there's a little test. You move to the next segment and just report it back to me, and it'll count towards the OHP. But I think it's helpful for all of you to do it, because then you'll better understand Secretary of the Interior standards from the Office of Historic Preservation's perspective. And then I can develop a list, and then we can reach out to those organizations too that provide training, and there's a few. They're not the greatest, but it's the best we have, I'm sorry to say.
And particularly since many of us are new, that would be.
I can push out the link again. I just saw it like a few weeks ago, so I can push the link out to you each again. And I'll follow up with the next meeting to make sure you guys complete that if you could.
So would that influence what goes into this, into the CLG?
No, not this, the years past.
It would be, this is a reflective document, not.
It is, and it's an opportunity for the commission to reflect on the things they could change, or we could do things to improve the training for next year. You know, we of course advise you to volunteer for the historic organizations. The county of Santa Clara has an organization for information to reach out, and the city is welcome to fund those training opportunities. So if you do come across something, and I'll make sure to send you all those organizations' names, and you can sign up for them, so you can receive notifications like I do, and I can make sure to push those notifications out to you also. And then it's up to you to decide if you want to attend. If you want to attend, we have training funding. There's not a problem with going. It's just a matter of finding the time for each of you, because I know you're all busy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Batista.
So, and I just wanted to say on behalf of John Baer, who's no longer here, that the CLG too, I don't know, again, you know, newly seated commissioners, and I don't purport to know everything about the historical commission, but the CLG is actually incredibly important for you, because I just want to verbalize this. It actually is the thing. So all the historic properties in Los Altos, you know, they are benefiting from the Mills Act, which gives them incredible tax breaks, right? And are able to, they benefit by us adhering to the tenets of a certified local government. And so I would just, again, like to reemphasize, as John said, that the city should be behaving for its historical properties in the same way that our residents are, because their status is on the line. Because if the city doesn't follow the protocol, the CLG can be pulled, in which case people who own historic homes then no longer have the protection of the Mills Act and any other benefits that they currently derive?
No, I have to just state it's not correct. I mean, I have the CLG contract in front of me, and it doesn't specify any of those constraints. The Mills Act, which I'm the only academic author of a national paper on regards to the Mills Act, does not specify or constrain the ability of individuals to have a Mills Act based on a city having a CLG status. It does specify having to submit DPR forms to OHP. It does provide an opportunity to provide grant funding, but it doesn't constrain your ability to apply for a mills or not. That is a local program established by a city, and it's unrelated to the CLG status. And I'll make sure to provide this to everybody, to each of the commissioners, because it's important for you to know the contract so that we can abide by it, so that we don't break the rules, because it's terribly important to receive the funding when we need it. And it's very important to follow the document that the council has assigned its name to.
Yes, I mean, I would be happy to like explore that further with you, because my understanding is different. And yeah, so we should do that offline.
Yes, and I did spend about 20 minutes on the phone with OHP this afternoon, talking about some of these discussions and about CLG and about whether an HRE was required. So I was kind of digging into them and their professionals to understand, does it trigger an HRE? Does it trigger these things? And it's not their belief it does. So it's something to understand better, because of course we always want to be fully compliant as a staff member. That's our goal. And that's what we hope to do for you.
And then I would, just a question of you too, is then does the commission review the application and any alterations that, because it's my understanding that alterations to any historic resources need to be filed with part of the CLG documentation at the end of the year. And so are those also part of the commission's responsibility tonight to have reviewed any alterations that have taken place?
No, the CLG only requires that and it's not listed here because it didn't happen, is that you have to forward to the state any new additions to the overall inventory. So if you add a structure to the inventory, then you have to provide them those documents. Because the trigger is, the expectation is, one, you have to use qualified historian, and then two, if you do an update to a DPR form, it has to be forwarded to the state. So then they require you to attach it. We haven't had any additions to the inventory in this period of September to October. So then it's not required, but we did have minutes, because you had 4 meetings, so then we're attaching the minutes. So that's the CLG status does trigger us to always send the DPR form. So if the orchard gets an updated DPR form, that DPR form has to be forwarded to OHP and it's put into their records. You'd always reach out to them. It's generally, they should have our DPR forms, but I've been here 11 years. I wasn't, the inventory was updated before I was here. So I'd have to check with them to see if all of it's updated. I don't know, but we do send them now.
When you send the CLG, who are you sending it to? Is it OHP?
So opposite historic, per the report, I believe, we send this to, at the Office of Historic Preservation, there's there's really one employee that manages CLG properties, and there's a backup person. So I spoke up to the backup person. The other person's on vacation this week. So we will send this document to them. They never acknowledge receipt generally or respond to it. We send it to them. We never hear from them, but I mean, we send it every year because that's what we're supposed to do. And then we've had wonderful opportunities where we received like $39,000 in grant funding because we did that. And that we fully complied, at least in sending the OHP documents, and that when we do DPR forms, we do utilize a historian. So all these things kind of play into it and we send it to them. And so they could, the city could, not participate. I mean, would it change our historic resource? No, it wouldn't change our inventory. Would we still do TPRs? Yes, because that's standard. Would our home still be Mills Act? Yes. But the driving factor is, this is the gold standard to an extent for historic designation, and we want to meet the standard. Not all cities do. And so that's, council set this goal, in 1991 is when this was signed. And, but they could terminate it if they wanted to, and they could also, but that's a more difficult process from the state because we'd have to really be showing bad faith on their end, and we have not shown that so far. I hope we wouldn't.
So then we need to review this document, yes?
Yes.
When I looked at this earlier, I mean, obviously the list of commissioners and everything needs to get, well, it's really.
I can read the item and then you could advise if you would like a modification. A lot of this language is, again, carryover from previous. I mean, we updated it like 4 or 5 years ago because we didn't like the language because it wasn't clear enough. So we try to simplify and make it more clear. So the first one is, are you considering, on page 1A1, are you considering amending or revising your certified ordinance this year? That is within October to September. Did we do that? No. We didn't modify our ordinance. Is that a potential future? Yes, but that's not in this time period, in the past.
Where are you reading from?
On the very first page.
Okay, there. There we go.
Very first page at the bottom, preservation laws, A1. Are you considering amending or revising your certified ordinance this year? No amendments or revisions to historic preservation were adopted during the reporting period. So during this period, we had no amendment. We do expect in the future to modify it, but so we may change that at some point in the future. And on the second page, provide an electronic link to your ordinance and appropriate section of the municipal code. I checked that ordinance and it works because they do change. So I clicked it, and it went to the ordinance. So we're good with regarding that, unless you have any concerns. B1, during the reporting period, what properties or districts have been locally designated? None this year. As you're aware, we didn't have any new structures or sites or orchards placed on the inventory. So then it's reported as none and the rest are non-applicable. B2, what properties or districts have been de-designated this past year? We've not had any. And we don't have districts anymore. That was repealed from our ordinance years ago. We hope to have that added back in at some point. C1, do you address historic preservation in your general plan? Yes, it is included in another element. So it's in a community design and historic preservation element. It's a combined element. At some point in this year or next year, we're going to be updating all those elements. That'll be coming to you, and it'll be the direction of the director whether we separate them into a separate historic preservation element, whether they stay combined or rephrased. But right now we do, and I provided the link. It's an active link.
Where do the elements reside?
The elements reside on the Planning Division webpage. If you go on the left side of the page to adopted plans, and then click on adopted plans, it'll open up a page. And if you scroll down, almost towards the bottom is general plan elements. And there's one for community design and historic preservation. You can click on that and it'll list all the city's policies regarding historic preservation and their implementation measures they hope to achieve. So those are very dated. And so the hope is to update that and make them more current and meet the goals and objectives of the community and the council. And that'll be probably within this year, at the beginning of next year, we'll be moving forward probably on those things, hopefully. The general plan update is around the corner. We just need to finish the safety element update, which I'm working on right So then D1 on page 3, who takes responsibility for design review or certificates of appropriateness? So this is historic kind of design review, and so all projects subject to design review go to the commission. We call it historic alteration or historic resource permits. We don't use the term design, but that's what it is. So whenever we have a modification to historic landmark or modification to historic resource, we bring it to you for consideration. And then you're the recommending body. The hope is to get that moved to acting final body, but that'll be hopefully part of an update to the ordinance, and that'll be directed by the director. D2, California Environmental Quality Act, explain the historic preservation staff and commission's role in providing input to CEQA documents. So again, the majority of projects reviewed by the commission are exempt from CEQA review. And that's based on as long as they comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards, even though there's an exception stating you can't apply, the exemptions don't apply to historic properties. There's a specific allowance if you meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. And if you meet these standards, it does not create significance or an effect on the historic integrity of a building or a site. Specific exception just for Secretary of the Interior standards. For a project that is subject to CEQA and listed in the Historic Resource Inventory, an initial study of environmental effects would be required, and the commission will review the project prior to the start of the initial study. So if we did ever have a project that could not meet Secretary of the Interior standards, then it would trigger an initial study, an evaluation of whether it could qualify for a negative declaration or mitigate a negative declaration. And if for some reason we couldn't potentially mitigate the impacts, an example potentially would be the Halsey House. We cannot mitigate the impacts of demolition if that was to happen, then it'd be an environmental impact report. So then that would trigger that process. And so it kind of goes over that process unless you think otherwise. And then subpart of 2, explain staff and commission's role in reviewing CEQA documents. Again, the majority of projects are exempt, but all these projects are reviewed by you. So it's a multi-step process. If there's an alteration to a historic site, normally it's a building, there's multiple permits required. There's a historic permit, there's a design review permit, and there's an environmental process. So you're the first person up, first commission. Historical commission will review it based on the historical preservation ordinance. Once you provide your recommendation, it then goes forward to the ZA or the planning commission. Both of you will review the environmental documents, and then it'll go forward based on your recommendation to the planning commission or ZA. And they will review the final document and propose approval. And then there's and I'm shortening it because there's a whole like legal noticing process that I'm not incorporating into it.
Yep.
Section 106, we do not generally deal with Section 106. Those are federally funded projects that are usually on the National Register, and we do not have any on our inventory that are National Register items. So staff would take the lead in providing input on Section 106 documents if appropriate or required by the city. We would never have one, but maybe potentially we could have if somebody was to pursue national designation, it's up to the individual homeowner generally. I don't know if I've seen one qualify yet, but potentially. Page 4 at the top, explain the staff and commission's role in reviewing Section 106 documents. Again, staff would take the lead on it. In effect, because it's an uncommon thing, staff would take the lead through a contracted firm who professionally is experienced and are technical experts in Section 106 documents and dealing with NEPA and National Environmental Protection Act. So it would be a separate process through a contracted firm. Establish an adequate qualified commission. During this period, we had a series of commissioners: Jonathan Adams, Russell Bartlett, Commissioner Coe, Larry Lang, or Councilmember Lang, and then Commissioner Page. These are professional disciplines. If any of your disciplines are incorrect, please let me know. your date of appointment, the term, date ending, and then your email address.
So under mine, if, I know it's Russell had retired, so I would be retired also.
Oh, are you retired? Oh, wonderful, okay.
You can put me down as retired too.
But I guess the question is this your professional discipline? Okay, so is it okay in parentheses to put retired, but keep your discipline?
Yes, okay.
Okay, we could do that. I think the goal is to understand whether your skill set is beneficial or helpful in historic preservation. If they understand that we haven't had a deep well of historic preservation experts to draw from in the community. We've had lots of historians, but they kind of want to understand and get a picture of that. So I'll make sure to update that and put you're retired. Attach resumes and statements of profession. We've generally not provided. Years ago, when we had a qualified historian, we did for the historian, but we haven't had qualified historian for 10 years on the commission, or 9 years. So if you want to read through that on the bottom of page 4, if you think it should change, please let me know.
That
A long time ago, yes.
sounds really good.
Yeah, a long time ago, before there was artificial intelligence.
So you really wrote it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it says that, you know, we look outside to get that professional understanding that we need. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, as the commissioner advised previously, it's helpful to have historians. So when I first started years ago, we didn't get these reports, the HREs, there all these technical documents, because we had actual qualified historians on the commission. So it wasn't as necessary, but as that evolved and we lost our like qualified professionals, then we replaced that with technical reports from qualified historians to provide you that information from their opinion that we lacked in the commission. So that's kind of how we replaced it from a staff's position to try to help guide you.
What is it, qualified historian? Is that assume a degree or?
Yeah, it's the National Park Service establishes particular standards. It's a very low bar, I think. A very low bar in regards to being a quality. One example would be an architect with particular training experience in historic preservation for a very short time. I think it's like 1 year or something like that. So it's very limited, but there's a whole series of ways you could qualify as a project historian. And that could also be in archaeology. There's a whole series of allowances. So what we request generally in the HREs, when we do get them, is we ask for them to tell us their qualification. And that is for you, so that you know that they're qualified. And for us too, because we want to make sure they're qualified. If they're not, we wouldn't hire them. Or we would have the applicant find someone else because they would not meet the standard. So then on page 5.2, if all positions are not currently filled, why is there a vacancy? This is incorrect. There is a vacancy. so I can correct that. That's a carryover, I apologize. We do have one vacancy and I don't know when that's being filled. I know they've advertised for it, so we hope to receive. Yeah, so we do, I'll fix that to reflect that there is one vacancy, and then I'll advise that the city is advertising for its replacement. Would that be sufficient, or would you want specific language tonight?
I'm not sure what else we could say. I think that's sufficient.
B, is the staff to your commission the same as the CLG coordinator? Yes. Okay. Yeah, myself as a liaison appointed by the manager is the liaison for CLG also. We don't coordinate much. I just the person that receives responses from them. If the position is not currently filled, why is there a vacancy? There isn't one. And then attached resume qualifications, Sean Gagos. We've never physically attached the resumes, and they've never asked for them. So, attendance records. This came from the minutes. If you believe any of them are incorrect, please let me know.
Yeah.
So, training received, no training. This is probably the first year where there's no training.
I remember doing a Mills Act training, but I can't remember when it was. It was,
I mean, it won't, I don't think, like if you consistently don't do training with CLG, they're gonna reach out to us probably. But we've not traditionally had years where we didn't have training. I think we've always found training. So this is the first year where there's not specific training, but we can make sure to ramp it up so we fill the box and meet the standard. Plus it's beneficial for you to better understand Secretary of Interior standards, CEQA, at least at the level that you're gonna be reviewing it for a majority of your projects, understanding the process. We can get you that training. It's, CEQA has a significant amount of training. If we can find one that's historic related, that'll be the barrier. That'll be the big thing to work towards. Did they hear any revisions to training? Is that correct? Yeah, I didn't have any either. I keep a file for training and there was nothing reported to me.
and I remember reporting to you, so it must have been a year before, 23.
Page 7, California CLG procedures require CLG to submit survey results, including historic context to OHP. This is for survey and inventory of properties that furthers the purpose of the National Historic Preservation Act. If you have not done so, submit an electronic copy. Yeah, I mean, we don't have any properties under the National Historic Preservation Act. They do have our current inventory, our local inventory in their possession, but we have not added anything to the historic inventory. We've not added anything through the National Historic Preservation Act at the national level. The response has been not applicable for a decade, and the CLG organization OHP has been fine with that. New surveys or survey updates, none this year. So an evaluation of a single property is not a survey. Also, if material changes to a property that's not included in a survey is not a change to the survey, it should not be reported here. So we're talking about a survey to the inventory, and none of that's happened.
What would you ask in this survey? What is it? What are they looking for?
So I think what they're looking for is if we were to update our overall inventory and do a survey of all the historic properties in the city, or many times I think it's difficult to survey an entire city, but to survey geographical areas where there would be homes that we've not previously evaluated. So right now our inventory is from 2011. Not all of the city has been inventoried. And so the goal with update to this to the historic resource inventory. We would do a survey of all the properties that the city defines is necessary to evaluate. And then we would do DPR forms updated for each of them. We would analyze them to see if they qualify for designation locally or at the state level. And then those would be added if they qualify into the inventory. And then those survey documents, if they qualify, and as long as either you or council approves them, you approve in resources, council approves landmarks, then we report those DPR forms as part of the updated inventory and survey to the state. As I've said over the years, I don't have a timeline. You know, they're working through safety element, the general plan, and the goal is to work through the inventory as the council has funding. And council, I think, in the more recent years has been really fair in funding things like this, these updates to our overall long-range planning measures, and the hope is to do that. And I think that's something that the director wants to move towards, but we first have to go through the safety element and then the whole general plan update, which will be a multi-year process likely. So this may be a few years off, but probably in your 2 terms, you'll probably be involved in that. And most commissions don't get that it's every 10, 15 years when we have updates. So provide for adequate public participation in local historic preservation programming, public education. And then we have the 40th annual Margaret Thompson Essay Contest. We have the topic and the date, which is first council meeting in May. So I'll make sure to add that date.
There will be a different, contest theme, is that right?
Yes. So in next year's report, it'll show the 41st one. The one I sent out in January is the 41st. This is last year's in May's. Yeah, it's kind of a year behind always.
This year's we didn't know.
Oh, that's right,
Okay, additional information for the National Park Service Annual Products Reports for CLG on page 9A, local register. During the reporting period, did you have a local register program to create local landmarks or local districts? Let me see this. So this is wrong.
A1 is wrong?
Yeah, I think 1A or A1 is yes, we do have a local register program. So it's yes, not no. But have we added any? No. We've not added any this year. So I'll correct that. A1, 2.
What is that program called? The register program? Or what do we?
Well, it's our local inventory. Yeah, I mean we do within our code, we do have a designation process. It's an effective program that if homeowners or the city or staff want to designate a property historic, once we do the analysis, historic resource evaluations or DPRs, then we can recommend it to the Historical Commission for approval as a designated resource. Or we can take it to council as a landmark. But it's not just the owners, it's actually the owners, it's staff or the director, it's the Historical Commission or council. All of them can propose a designation of a property, but then we have to do the analysis. A historian would have to do that. But we haven't received one this year. Local property tax incentive programs. During the period, did you have a Mills Act program? Yes. How many properties did you add? 1. Total 15. Every year or two, we add one, so we're slowly creeping up. D, local bricks and mortar grant programs. During the period, did you have a local government historic preservation grant or loan? No. We haven't had a loan in a few years now. If yes, how many properties? We haven't had any. It's not applicable. E, going to page 10. During the reporting period, did your local government have historic preservation regulatory laws authorizing the commissioner staff review of local governments of projects or impacts in historic property? Yes. We have within the code a process for evaluating historic resources. That's called the advisory review process. And we have a process for reviewing alterations to landmarks, and it's called the historic alteration permit process, which is what you reviewed tonight, which was an alteration to a landmark. So it's yes. If yes, how many properties did your local government review for compliance? I reviewed the historic agendas, and you reviewed 7 last year, either advisory or landmark, or some combination of them. They didn't ask for me to specify, so I didn't. Local property acquisition, F. Did you have a local program to acquire historic properties? No. The city does not have a program to acquire through purchase, donation, or other means. Whether or not you were able to participate in the free camp trainings, I had no idea this existed. So it's hard to say. I will reach out to OHP about this. I read this when I saw it. It's an update. It's an update to the previous year's forms. This is new. So I do now know there's a camp program. So would you like to see the OHP fund camps from the NAPC for the future? Yes, we would appreciate the OHP funding the NAPC's Commission Assistance and Mentoring Program, which are essential training workshops tailored to provide education, resource, and mentorship. What are the 3 topics of training provided by OHP? Secretary of the Interior Standards, and a commission-specific training to guide historic commissioners on reevaluating DPR forms and HREs. So I think the goal is, at least for staff, is we'd like for you to understand Secretary of the Interior Standards better. That's paramount. That's what you see primarily. And then 2, that when you see the historic resource evaluations and you see the DPR forms, you know what it means. You know what all the coding means. There's a series of codes that you understand the process. There's a particular process to it. And so I specifically told them we would like to see them do this type of training. Okay. I think any commission should know how these 523, there's a handbook by OHP and we can provide that to you, but there's no training. There's a handbook. We can provide you the handbook if you'd like that. And then we attach the minute.
Legal and ethical responsibilities. Right?
Yeah, and that was the other one. I'll make those few revisions, otherwise, but
We need to vote, or?
no, generally, it's not necessary. We're just asking for revisions, and then we just, it's just a process we do every year, so we'll send it off for them to review it, or to review it. I don't think they review it. Honestly, I think it gets sent off, and they, we never hear from them again about it. I'm sorry to say.
Well, in some sense, that's a good thing.
Yes, I mean, we've had complaints in the past. From members of the public about CLG, and OHP is not very concerned. I mean, they understand the political dynamics of cities, so they usually aren't too concerned about issues locally.
Okay, so we can close that agenda item?
Yes.
So next on it, finally. Informational items. And City of Los Altos, Margaret Thompson, essay contest, see the status.
Yeah, so Margaret Thompson Essay Contest is going. So outreach efforts, we did contact the town crier, a newspaper article was published. I think I saw that, so that went out prior. Actually, it may have come out on the 9th, and the program started on the 8th. It came out like a day late. I apologize. The essay contest webpage is updated, and that was updated, I think, in December. So that was, and then we did notify, staff did reach out to all the individual school districts. We confirmed all the contactees because they change every single year because principals seem to move around everywhere, every year. They're never the same. Yes. So I had to call them and speak to them every year and get the new person and then send them the information. So I did that, and I found a whole series of new schools I didn't know existed. So I forwarded to the new schools that I didn't know existed. So series of private schools. So they're all participating this year, hopefully. I spoke to each of like their principals or someone, so they said they're going to participate. And then so I provided with you some background on the Margaret Thompson Essay Contest, and then the actual attachments and documents that are provided wonderfully by the History Museum, who organizes this for us. Well, they organize it and we work with them to manage it.
I'm excited about the topic this year. I think that'll be nice. Okay. Okay. Next, we have commissioners' report and comments, and we have a report from the History Museum.
My name's Anna Toledano. I've met. I am the director of the Los Altos History Museum. I delighted to be invited by Commissioner Atkinson to join today, and so if there's anything that the museum can do or offer or work with the Historical Commission, then we were happy to do that. And I know that some of you are also seen you in the museum halls, so just wanted to put a name to a face for you, and thank you for the invitation as well. Thank you for running the meeting.
Thank you for being here.
And sitting through this whole thing.
Just, one of the things in the work plan that we have for the Historical Commission is a goal, pre-COVID, for every year back, pre-COVID, 2019 back, there was always a joint meeting between the board of the History Museum and then the Historical Commission. Is an opportunity for each of them to come together and to talk about the agendas they're working on for the year. It's one of the purposes of the commission per our ordinance for historic preservation. So we weren't able to do it this last year. I'm hoping to get approval to do it. I have been able to get approval this last year, so I'm hoping to push to try to get it. If I can get my management team to allow us, then I'll be reaching out to you. It's usually in September. Usually the city, if they authorize it, provides not great food, but like pizza and things like that. And then History Museum provides drinks or whatever. And then it's not heavy on topics and more just conversation, I think. And so we try to do that every year since we try to work really directly with you as much as we can. It's just not been successful the last few years.
Turnover too, so yeah, happy to facilitate that in September.
I think particularly with our 2 new members, and if we get another one, that would be really good.
Yeah, if I can get the management team to allow me to schedule it, I just kind of push them every year and see if we can reintroduce it again and explain the intention behind it. And hopefully we can do that for you.
Yeah, if there's anything I can do to help with that, please let me know.
Okay. And potential future agenda items? Is there anything we need to?
No, the only thing, of course, that you're aware is that there is a joint meeting for you on the sixth, a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and, with the Historical Commission. And so your packets will be going out at the end of the week. Generally Thursday.
Both, but I will not be here on the sixth.
Which commissioners are attending? Okay, so as long as we have a quorum, then we're fine. We need 3 of 5, even though it's not a fifth person, you have to have 3 members attend. If anything changes, please let us know right away, because it's a important topic.
Okay. You should adjourn.
You like to adjourn? You hit your hand.
Adjourn the meeting.